Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful night. Good evening to you, Seer. I hope you're ready to learn some more lessons today. Ooh, before we get started, I should probably plug in my tablet so I can actually write. Is there a question you have, Seer? Bits! Thank you! Thank you for the bits. That's very kind of you. Let me just plug this in and make sure everything's working correctly. So I can write on my blackboard. There we go. And we'll get started. Make sure everything's working properly. We are on pencil mode instead of brush mode, so we'll fix that. And we are using not a good color. Let's fix that. Surprises. That is exciting. Alright. So let's talk today. The first thing that we're going to talk about today, the first part of this lesson, is going to be the following sentence. I'm going to say blank ga arimasu. So this is a sentence ender that we're going to use to specifically indicate that things are here, to state that something is around us. So if we say something like the following, let's say asoko. As you remember from a few lessons ago, asoko means that over there. Asoko ni, it's like gakko, as we know, means school. Gakko. Asoko ni gakko ga arimasu. So let's talk about this sentence here. We know some parts of the sentence already. We know that asoko means that over there. We know that gakko, we know that school. And arimasu, this is our new word. This is our new vocabulary word. Arimasu means that there is. It's a word that we use to state that something is there. There is. So essentially what the sentence would translate to would be there is a school over there. So we would say asoko ni gakko ga arimasu. I'll take a sip. So what this is, right? Typically, instead of saying something like arimasu, we usually end our sentences with this. Compared to versus, let's say, if we end the same sentence here, asoko ni gakko gakko say if we were to end this with this instead of arimasu, essentially what this would be saying, the difference is that this sentence here is saying there's a school over there, while this sentence here would be saying that over there is a school. So this is just stating that there's a school or that is a school over there, while this is pointing out specifically that over there exists a school. That's the difference between using arimasu and using des. that arimasu more or less means that you're stating that something is there, as opposed to what something is. We're pointing it out rather than making a statement that it's there. We can use some other examples, like, let me just write another example for this. Let's say I write the following sentence. And my throat's doing fine, it's not hurting. I don't even actually talk that much today at work, at the academy. So, maybe it's because I just haven't been talking too much in general. Let's say, koko ni. This is ka be ga arimasu. As another example of this. This means there is a cafe here. And you can see, just like what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it's using these koko words, koko, asoko, soko. These are all referring to locations now. It's saying here, there is a cafe. As opposed to a sentence like, versus a sentence like, kore wa kafe this. So these are two different sentences here. They're both using these ko words to relate that it's something that's near us, but this means this is a cafe. So that's the difference here. So this is stating that this is a cafe. This sentence here, this first sentence, koko ni cafe ga arimasu, is stating that there's the presence of a cafe here, that the cafe is near us, as opposed to just saying that this building in front of us is a cafe. It's kind of, there's like differences here that aren't too big, but it's just the wording here that makes a difference, where using arimasu represents that an object is around us, as opposed to just talking about the object directly. And if you note, we do use different particles here. When we start with words like when starting sentences with koko, soko, asoko. When we start sentences like this, they're always followed with the ni particle. Compare this to like what we did here, kore wa, sore wa. A lot of our typical topic particles, watashi wa, boku wa, kimi wa. This is different because we're talking about places here. We're talking about a location, koko ni. If we think back to the diagram that we talked about last week, for those of you who missed it, we talked about the word order. Usually our topic particles, the start of our sentences, use wa. But these sentences about existence, about arimasu, starts with a place. And we use place ni, which is also different from this word order. It's kind of like exceptions, and it's weird how we're learning about exceptions so soon, but this is a common sentence, so this sentence type here does get brought up a lot. So it's important to know the distinction when we're using arimasu sentences, that we do koko ni, soko ni, asoko ni. And that's really the main case where this happens, as the start of our sentence. So, koko ni cafe ga arimasu. There is a cafe here. And also, we can talk about owning objects with this. So, we talked about location. We can also talk about a new kind of example here. Let's say this following sentence we have here. Let's say we have the sentence, I don't have that book. Obviously, we know I can be used with a lot of words. Watashi, boku, ore. So we could say, or actually, when we're talking about objects, as a speaker, we know that we don't have to use that. Sorry about that. So let's translate the sentence into Japanese. We could say, sono hon. And we know that hon is book. So we know that this means that book. Sono hon ga arimasen. That book. So, ga arimasen here, essentially saying doesn't exist or it's not here. Not here. When we say arimasen, when we negate that, the existence of something, we're saying that it's not present here. Sono hon ga arimasen. The book is not here. Or if someone's asking you for something, you would just say, I do not have that book. And also note, again, like I said before, since this is sono as opposed to soko, we're not using that ni particle. It's just immediately as the object, sono hon ga arimasen. We're not talking about any locations. We're just connecting an object to the verb arimasen. Another example would look like, it is weird. Is there something specifically weird about it, like the comparison between object and location? Because that's the main difference between the two cases here, is that this, koko ni, this is location, versus this being an object. So, like we talked about last week, it's about the property, the context of where these words are placed. So, when you're talking about an object, we use different particles than compared to when we're talking about the location of something. This is just talking about a specific book, while the previous example was talking about the location of a specific place. And you can see here there's actually, this is location. This here would actually be the object. So this actually has a location, an object, and a verb, as opposed to just an object and a verb. And it all goes back to that whole word order thing that we were talking about, that topic of word order. We know that verbs always go at the ending, and things build away from that, where the object usually comes second to last before the verb. Another example of this kind of sentence would be like this. So this is a statement, while something, maybe a question, would look like this. We'll say, en pizza ga arimasen ka? Just to show different utilities. Arimasen. And good that you got it. Shrimpy Butterfly, welcome to the classroom. We're just getting started and we're going over a lot of different examples right now. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'd be more than happy to take stops to let you catch up. So here we have enpitsu, pencil. Here we're just talking about an object. We're not talking about any specific object. Like, we're not saying that pencil, this pencil. We're just saying pencil ga arimasen. Or not arimasen, that's not what I wanted to write. What I want to write is arimatsu ka. And as we know, whenever we end a sentence with ka, that turns into a question. Is there a? So essentially, what this would be, when you ask this to someone, This pencil is not here, right? Or, yeah, what I wrote originally would be, if I wrote enpitsu ga arimasen, what I originally had there was, there isn't a pencil here. But now that I'm writing out arimasu ka, in this case here, that previous sentence would mean the pencil is not here, but this sentence means, right, is the pencil here? Or more casually, if you were talking to someone, enpitsu ga arimasu ka? You would also be, this is a way that you would ask, is there a pencil? Or if you were asking this to someone, if you were directing this to someone, do you have a pencil? Essentially, is a pencil within your person? Yeah, more or less. That's like the literal translation, is there a pencil here? But asking it to someone means, it'd be how you would ask them if you had a pencil. If you could borrow a pencil, essentially. You have a pencil I could use. Nice. For when an event takes place. Right. And so, as you notice, as you may or may not have noticed, all these examples, we're talking about books, we're talking about pencils, we talked about a cafe, we talked about a school. When we use arimasu, arimasu talks about the existence of inanimate objects. It talks about buildings, items, objects, places. There's a certain other word that we have to use in order to talk about living creatures. And what that is ga imasu. So this is used for living things. So if you're talking about, like, if you have a brother or a sister, if you're talking if a person is a specific thing, you could say something like the following. Asoko ni. So that over there. Say sen. Wait. I wrote this backwards in my notes. Asoko ni. Sensei ga imasu. Functionally, it works the same way as arimasu, but it lets us know that the context has to do with living creatures or things that are alive. So this means that over there, teacher there is. Or if we write this in a way that makes sense in English, there is a teacher over there. Asoko ni sensei ga imasu. So, arimasu and imasu work very similarly to one another. The only difference is that arimasu is used for inanimate objects. Ooh, Siren, thank you for the host. And imasu works with living creatures, animals, people, I think plants. I should have looked that up beforehand, but I believe as long as it's alive, that it counts as imasu, a living creature. So that's the difference. They work pretty much the same way. It's just arimasu, inanimate objects, while imasu, living things. So if you were to say, like, there's a spider over there, you'd say, そこに雲がいます. There's a spider over there. I think Kumo is spider. I believe so. But that's really the main difference. You're saying that something is over there, that there's something there. We use imas or arimas. And the reason why this specifically gets its own kind of section here is because if you notice, there is one other big difference that each of these examples have used. And that's this. Despite imas being a verb, we can note two things here that differ from our usual sentences. And this is really just an exception that mostly comes up at the start with these kinds of sentences. First off, these sentences do not use no wa. Instead of wa, we use wa, and there's no o. Despite knowing that imas and arimas essentially are verbs, they follow the same structure as other verbs. We don't say sensei oimasu, we say sensei ga imasu. So this is like a whole section on an exception, or a whole section on an exception, where talking about the existence of something specifically uses ga as a particle. And that's the main thing I think to take away from here, is that in cases when we're talking about imas and arimas, that things are here, we use the ga particle to denote that. We denote that things are around us. And that's really all there is, I believe, I have to talk about existence. Which brings us then into our next topic, unless anyone has questions. The next topic, this one is a bit of a vocabulary-heavy topic, though it does refer to a lot of terms that we talked about all the way back in... It was 2 weeks ago, I think, when we talked about those basic kanji. A lot of these terms will come back to us. For the ones that we didn't go over, I'm actually not going to use the kanji because they're a little bit more complicated, and I don't want to write that out because I think it could get a little confusing. The basic kanji that we use are pretty simple and straightforward, visually. So, in a previous lesson, say this, describing location. In a previous lesson, I think it was like 3 to 4 weeks ago, we talked about koko, soko, asoko, and also doko. We talked about locations and also asking where locations are. If I ask something like, Gakko. I use school a lot because it's like one of the easiest places to write out. And hey, if I keep on writing this out, maybe it'll get burned into your memory. Gakko wa doko desu ka? And as you may remember, so gakko is school, doko is where, so where school, and essentially desu ka is, or I guess this is the question mark. Des is just how we end our state of being sentences when we use just the wa particle. Exactly, where is the school? School is where. So this sentence essentially translates to, where is the school? And we have some pretty basic responses to this. We could say things like Gakko. You'd think I'd get better at writing this out the more I do it, but I feel like they get worse and worse as I go along. Gakko wa. And we learned 3 different terms for this. Gakko wa asoko. Gakko wa soko. And 学校はここです. That's how we would respond. 学校はあそこです, 学校はそこです, or 学校はここです. And those responses literally translate to the school is over there. There. Right, the school is here / there. Correct. Or here. It's the school is here, there, or over there. All the way over there. And that's how we talk about very simple relative location. We can say that it's near me, it's near you, or it's far away from both of us. But we can be a little bit more descriptive with our locations. For example, if I do the following sentence, and actually I wrote this out in my notebook, but I don't think I checked to make sure I wrote this out correctly, so I'm going to look this word up really quickly, just to make sure I don't actually write it wrong on the board. I also used this last time, but I still... Sometimes you just forget how to write things. Cool, my memory is great. The following sentence, we could be a little bit more specific here. We could say, 学校 the school 学校は I'm gonna write this out. It's a bit of a scary one, a big compound word, but I'll explain what it is. Some of you might know it when I say it. I'm writing this kanji also sort of poorly, but I think you should be able to tell what it is if you know what it is. 学校は図書館 Just write this out. 学校は図書館 No. And I'm going to explain all these kanji. Don't worry too much about it. No hidari desu. So what this is... Yes, Reina. Yes, I did write Toshokan. So this is... Let me write it out in Japanese, too, because this one's a little bit more of a complicated sentence. This is probably the most complicated one I've written so far. 学校はこの力が図書館の左です。And what this translates to, we know 学校 wa, we know that this is the school is, and what this is, 図書館 is library. And hidari, we talked about this in the kanji lesson that we did a while ago. Hidari is left. So if we break this down, Toshokan no hidari, we know that no, as a particle, represents possession. It represents relation of an object. Toshokan no hidari means the left of the library is to the left of the library. Good. 学校は図書館の左です. The school is to the left of the library. So you could see, instead of just saying 学校はそこです, we say 学校は図書館の左, blank no blank. The first one, the word to come before the no is usually what we're relating the object to, while the term to come after the no is where it's located, whether it be above, below, to the left, to the right, in front, behind. The second term after the no represents position. Gakko wa toshokan no hirari desu. And there's a lot of different words. They're all very basic, so I actually want to make this list because I think it's a pretty good, just like a list of words that we can like know and familiarize ourselves with. And we'll go through a couple more examples using this format. Let's take a look at the next one here. So, examples of positional terms. So the basic sentence structure is x, y, no. We're going to make this whole list here. So we could say that if we want to say that something is to the right of something, we would say y no migi. Or the kanji form is migi. Right? We have hidari. We just talked about that one. Hidari. Left and right look very similar to each other, so that's one way you can help sort of memorize those two kanji. They both have that little cross, and then the symbol, the radical below that cross is what's different. Left. We have mae. Which is in front of, and actually this is a new one. So mae is a little bit complicated, but not too complicated. You can see it has part of the moon radical there. So this is in front of. So migi, hidari, mae. We have ushiro. You ever played fitness boxing? They say mae ushiro when they have you bobbing back and forth to say front, back, front, back. These are a bunch of different kinds of positional terms. This is ushiro's kind of complicated to write out. Looks like this. That's ushiro. Actually, this is one of the few cases where looks more like this is a kanji, but this only covers ushi. But this is ushiro. Get some of this vocab out here, just so we can be familiar with it. Behind. And thank you for that contribution, Ushiro. We have ue. Ue looks pretty simple. This is above. And then shita. We talked about these as well. Ue and shita are also pretty relatable. They're just kind of upside down versions of one another. Below. Let's see. And the last one I'll write is naka. And naka is inside. That's the basic structure of these kinds of sentences, these location sentences. So I could say something like, Tomodachi wa mise no naka desu, or Tomodachi is friends, wa mise no naka, inside the store. And I'll let this stay up for a little bit longer, just so that if anyone wants to copy this down, or if anyone wants to screenshot it, you can. Let's take a look at the next one. Got some examples here. Oh, you're right. They didn't include that one in my in the list that I was looking for, but that's a good one too. If we're going to include naka, then we might as well include soto. So good point, Reina. So last one, the next one we could talk about is soto. Or like this. And if this is inside, then the opposite to inside is outside. So naka and soto are opposites. Let's look at some examples here. Oh, I wrote that on the wrong layer, but we can just merge down and that works too. So some examples here. And I'll list the translations of words, but let's see if you could list out or see what this means. We have Tomodachi wa mise no naka desu. Sentence like this. This is friends. And this is store. That's one example. I'll put the other example up just to give people looking at the first example time to parse that. The second example is neko wa uru no shita desu. Neko, many of you guys may know, at least just from hearing the word, neko is cat. Teberu, teburu, is, you can see it's written in katakana. So you know it's a loan word. Teburu is just table. So the first sentence, Tomodachi wa mise no naka desu, translates to my friends are inside the store. The second sentence, neko wa teburu no shita desu, the cat is below the table. Very good. Below, under, synonymous. And it's just very simple grammar. They're very simple sentences, but both of them work. Both of them work. But it's important to know how we can write these, convey these kinds of simple messages. I think one of the hard things when learning a language is you can learn a lot of different words and vocab, but learning how to phrase things, learning the grammar and the structure, so you can properly position these terms together, I think is very important. And this is just a very simple structure that can really get your point across, stating the location, because it's easy to just relate things to other things that you can see inside the store, under the table. Very, very clear things. All right, let me see here. And then there's one other kind of example that I want to bring up. So these sentences are pretty simple. But let's bring back this again. Topic, time, place, object, verb. We talked about this a lot last week. We talked about making sure that we have everything here, ordering them together. So let's talk about this next condition here, because all we've been talking about so far... Let me do this. Let me make this on a separate layer, just so I can use the cat example on its own. Wrong layer. Oops. So to use the cat example on its own, we have a topic, the cat. Wa teburu no shita desu. So it doesn't work as well here because we don't use the wo here. This whole thing works as a verb. But we have topic, place. I guess this would be the object because we're talking about the table. So cat, we have topic, object, verb. Very simple. It hits 1, 2, 3 of these 5 different objects here. It doesn't include a time or a place. But let's say that we want to involve a place here. We want to say that, say like maybe the table under the house, or like at the table inside the house, essentially. I'm not going to use that as the exact example. I have something else written here. But let's go with this following sentence. Let's say I do the following sentence. Let's say, Watashi wa gakko, bring back the school again. Gakko no mae. Like I said earlier, mae, you have that in your notes, is front. So gakko no mae would be in front of the school. Gakko no mae de on, is book, on wo yomimasu. Yomimasu. So if we label this in a way similar to how we labeled them before, we have watashi wa. This is our topic. Gakko no mae de, which again you can see lines up with that place de terminology. So this is our place. On wo, that's our object. Yomimasu is our verb. So what the sentence translates to is we have I in front of the school, book read. And that's how we line this up. And just like we did last week, we compare this. If we rewrite this into English, the more sensible version would be I read the book in front of the school. So we can build our sentences here as long as we refer back to our notes, as long as we use what we learned in the past, as long as we keep on building on that, we can build up our sentences. If the sentence is, I read my book in front of my school, yes. So, watashi no gakko no mae. So that would be double no. That would say, because if you're saying my school instead of the school, right, it's correct. Also, in that case, you actually would need to include watashi no gakko no mae. If you just said my school, this is kind of optional. As we talked about before, since you're the speaker, the topic particle is optional. If you know who you're talking to, if you're talking about yourself, you don't necessarily need to include this, but you would if you were saying watashi no gakko no mae, my school, as opposed to I am at the school. So like, either way, I am at the school or I am at my school. If you were to say I am at my school and include the topic particle, it would actually be watashi wa watashi no gakko no mae. So that would actually be a mouthful, and I would definitely drop the watashi wa at that point. So that is how we talk about position. It just builds up. JP is full of omissions. Yep, there's a lot of omissions. I mean, like we said last week, these particles end up getting dropped a lot in conversational speech. It's really only in written speech that you see, in writing, that you see this kind of particle usage. It does get dropped. I'm not sure how much. I mean, I watch anime sometimes, and sometimes you hear particles, sometimes you don't. But I guess I haven't thought too much about it. I always get the times that I do recognize what I am hearing, but I guess sometimes I kind of tune out what I don't understand or I don't listen as closely to it. But yeah, particles are definitely less common in spoken language as opposed to written language. There's one last topic I want to talk about for tonight. So we talked about position and we talked about existence. The last thing I want to talk about is something that I touched upon a little bit last week. A pretty simple topic, honestly. There's not too much to go on here with, but it'll be nice to go over it because I talked about it last week and I might as well explain it. Past tense. Because obviously we don't always talk about what we are doing. Sometimes we like to talk about what we did. That's common in any language. The past tense. And we're going to focus first on the sentences of the following form. X, Y, Y, this. Ooh, thank you for the bits again. Thank you. I appreciate it, Seer. So, when you say something is something else, I am a teacher, you are a student, etc., etc., we would say things like, watashi wa gakusei desu. So, let's start with this example. I'll use boku this time. Boku. Boku wa gakusei desu. Getting a lot of mileage out of gaku. Gakusei desu. Or I am a student. Boku wa gakusei desu. Now, say you graduated from school and you are no longer a student, but I mean, no longer being a student doesn't mean that you weren't a student at one point. Thank you. So to say the past tense, boku wa gakusei deshita. I was a student. Ending those sentences, deshita. Reina has it right. Boku wa gakusei deshita. So des is present tense. I am a student. But deshita, I was a student. Boku wa gakusei deshita. So that's the difference. Whenever you end with this, that's present tense. Deshita is past tense. This, present. Deshita, past. And these are both positive forms. To say that you are and you were in a positive way, that is this and deshita. Obviously, I don't actually think I talked about the negative form of des before, so it's also good that we go over this right now. I might have, but I don't remember. So I'll be going over it again. Let's say the following. Let's say that you are looking at a dog, or you think you're looking at a dog. Maybe you see an animal from the distance, you see that it has 4 legs, got a tail, it's making sounds. So we're not going to use imasu and imasen. That is, well, that's the positive and negative form of imas, or to exist. But let's look at the following. So, sore. Sore wa inu. janai. Desu. それは犬じゃないです. So we know それは. We know that says that inu is dog. And janai is isn't. Janai desu is not. So someone pointed out, maybe someone thought that was a dog, but then you look at it and you were like, that thing's meowing. That is a cat. You would say, それは犬じゃないです. That is not a dog. Janai desu? Is... Let me do this. Write this out here. I want to leave some room on top of it, just so I can write out a little bit more. Going to be... negative. I mean, if you watch a lot of Japanese media, you probably have heard people say janai a lot. Nai, janai. It means it's not. It isn't. Janai desu. This is a present form. So, それは犬じゃないです. And we're not using imasu in this sense because we're not saying that there isn't a dog there. We're saying that that is not a dog. We're not talking about its existence, we're talking about whether or not the animal is a dog, not whether or not the dog is there. So that's another note to state the difference between using desu and using arimasu. Now, let's say that you agreed with your friend who said that that was a dog, and then you think back. And you realize that there was no possible way that that was a dog. The past tense form would be それは犬じゃなかった。じゃなかったです。So, in this case here, actually, let me just make sure. I'm pretty sure it's this, but now I'm second guessing myself that I might have copied it wrong. So let's just make sure. Because I don't want to state this so clearly or so strongly and then be wrong again. So I just want to double check. I think I'm right here though, but I just want to make sure. It's always good to double check. Right, so it is not deshita. So when we're doing past tense of negative, and that's important to note, because deshita is the past form of the present, or the past form of the positive, but the past form of the negative is janakatta desu. As opposed to janai, we use janakatta. We have, again, that dog was not. That was not a dog. それは犬じゃなかったです. So, じゃなかった. And that's what we have to do. That's our past tense form. So overall, we have this is a present positive, deshita is a present negative, or the past positive, janai desu is the present negative, and janakatta desu is the past negative. But those are the four forms: present past, positive, negative. Let's actually do this. Let's adjust this. I think I want to make one whole layer here. We'll take this. Let me do this here. Let's clear this out. And let's move this here. Just so we have a nice slide here. So this, positive present. Deshita is positive, or past. Janai desu is present negative. And janakata desu is past negative. So that's how we end sentences. That's the proper terminology for past and present. Positive and negative for any sentence that we normally end with this. That's just any kind of sentence that doesn't use a verb normally with the o particle. But we did talk about that a little bit last week. Let me just leave it up a little bit longer. We did talk about verbs last week, and we did mildly touch upon the usage of past tense there. So let's do it in a little bit more of a formal setting now. So now, for verbs, we know that present tense, the present positive, is mas. Tabemasu, yomimasu, nomimasu. Ending with mas is a present positive, while the present negative is masen. Like arimasu, arimasen, imasu, imasen. But now we have to talk about the negative. Right, just like those cases here. Now the past positive is mashita. So think about desu and deshita. The past positive is mashita. And then, funnily enough, silly enough, the past negative is kind of weird with this. Because if we think about the past negative in the other case with this, it was janakata desu. But here, it is the following. Yeah, there's a lot of people streaming on a Thursday night. I'd imagine a lot of people in schools and stuff. You have this as the start of their long weekend, so I know a lot of things are going on. So we have ma, sen. So again, just like the present negative, we have masen, deshita. So that's what makes this tricky. Because if you think about the past negative for desu, it's janakata desu. But here, we use deshita. So that is one tricky thing to keep up with. And just some examples here. With the past positive, we have a sentence like Anbaga o abe abemashita. Or, yes, I ate a hamburger. Because the Japanese word for hamburger is hanbaga. Hanbaga o tabemashita. Mashita is past tense. In the past negative, we could say something like the following. We know that we have this. This is ni hon. Nihongo. Nihongo o and this is, as many of you may know already, ben yo benkyou shimasen deshita. Or Nihongo o benkyou shimasen deshita. I didn't study Japanese. Which I could say about myself for some of the past few days preparing these lessons. I definitely kept on thinking, wow, I could write up my lesson plans. And then I put it off until yesterday night and did a lot of it while working today. Yaru sugiru. So, yeah, procrastination, very much procrastination. I feel like I was busy with things and also wasn't busy with things at the same time. Time flies. But that was the last thing I wanted to talk about for today. So, we talked about the past tense, we talked about positions, we talked about existence. It's a lot of topics we talked about. We talked about a lot last week too. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to end up doing another kanji practice stream next week. I think next week is the week that I'm going to do the name kanji stream. I think it's a pretty interesting topic to talk about. I think being able to recognize names is actually a pretty cool thing. And it's not something you have to commit to, like, heavy memory. I think learning some of the basic name kanjis will bring you pretty far in terms of, like, being able to figure out what names are. So that's what I want to do. I feel like I don't want to go too fast with the information that I throw out because, you know, not everyone can catch every lesson, and I get that. So I do like to give, like, time in between each of the kinds of topics, between vocabulary and grammar. Just for, like, maybe, like, new people who just found my channel, or for other people who might have been busy, to just study up on some of the stuff that they missed, and then just to mix things up a bit. Yes, this is the end of class today. I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about, covered all my notes, and yeah, I covered what I wanted to. 1 second. And yeah, so I think it was pretty good. 1 hour of a lesson. I don't want to go for too long, especially since I don't have anything extra planned. Otsukaresama deshita. Thank you, thank you. And yeah, for those of you who are here, on Saturday will be my next stream, and it'll be a collab with Reina. We're gonna play some Eternal Return Black Survival. We're probably gonna die repeatedly, and it's gonna be a fun collab where we probably spend more time dead than alive in game. Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed the lesson. That goes for everyone else who may be lurking in the chat. Sometimes, you know, I don't really know who is and isn't, like, lurking in the chat, but it's always nice whenever I hear, like, people, like, mentioning that they watch my streams, or people, like, mentioning that, like, that I don't know that they're there. And it's always, like, really nice to know that there's more people than I think there are listening in and watching. I always appreciate that. It always makes it feel... It feels good knowing that I can be helpful to other people. And yeah, I did look through the book. I know the next grammar lesson, I guess I should relook at the book again. The next grammar lesson is going to be, yeah, it's going to be a lot of particle stuff and a lot of time stuff. It's probably going to be more of a mixed bag kind of lesson where I talk about a bunch of different subjects. Ooh, 17 bits. Thank you, Siren, for the bits, for the cheer. I love all the hearts. And yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I actually really like doing the kanji lessons a lot. I like going over like just vocab because I think it's really cool also. Like the grammar stuff is really nice, learning how to construct sentences and put things together. But I feel like there's just something really neat about learning all the different kanji because I mean, when you think about it, that's really what most of Japanese is. When you read like anything in Japanese, you're going to be seeing more kanji than you are kana, unless you're playing a game like Pokemon or other simple games. So I'm probably going to look up like the most basic name kanjis and then sort of branch out from there, branch out and maybe find some more uncommon ones. Maybe instead of looking, I know some books will talk about like the top 20 most used name kanjis, but I think I'd probably get through more than 20 in less than an hour. You can't give subs? That is weird. Oh, that's disappointing. Though, I mean, the VODs are always there. For those of you who are new here and may not know, if you look down below, underneath, you can see that there are links to my Twitter and my YouTube. Though I assume most people are here from Twitter. But if you don't know that my YouTube is there, thank you again, Siren. If you don't know, if you're not aware, my YouTube channel has all of my old uploads. So if there was a lesson that you missed, I actually, the other day, archived everything into playlists. So all the grammar lessons from the start to now are archived. I think there's 6 other lessons aside from this one, and then 1 kanji lesson. So there's a lot of material to work with there. There's a lot of study material. I don't really go too long though, so it's maybe 6 hours. And maybe it's even less if you play it on 2 times speed. Because I do go a little slowly as I explain, so you could probably speedrun all the videos I have. Thank you. I love all the hearts. Thank you so much, honestly. I appreciate every single one of those bits. But yeah, if you ever want to catch up, then the YouTube archive is there. And that goes for pretty much any of my other videos if you ever miss any of those streams. But that's where I archive everything. Doki doki. That's how I feel looking at all those. Thank you. It makes me really happy to hear that you enjoy my classes. And it makes me feel more appreciated than as an actual teacher sometimes. I get more interaction with you guys, I feel, than I get out of my own students. At least, not forced interaction, I should say. So, that's it. I hope you guys all have a wonderful night. I'll see you guys all next week, the same time, for the next lesson. And I will check why you can't give subscriptions. That is weird. Because it worked last time, but I don't know why it's not working now. So I will look into that. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Class is dismissed.